But let's begin with President Trump, who says the U.S. will reduce tariffs on Chinese goods. The announcement came after his meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping in South Korea. On Air Force One, our Nancy Cordes pressed the president for details.
How soon do you think you could sign a trade deal with China?
Well, I think pretty soon. We have not too many major stumbling blocks. We have a deal. Now, every year we'll renegotiate the deal. But I think the deal will go on for a long time, long beyond the year. We'll negotiate at the end of a year.
CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe is joining us now from the White House. So, Ed, break down for our viewers what kind of progress was actually made here.
Well, what the president says happened versus what the Chinese said happened versus what actually happened is to be determined in the days to come, Vlad. But the president says that he's going to be reducing tariffs on China to about 47% because there's been some breakthroughs. They're going to ease off the limits on exporting rare earth minerals that are needed to build things like batteries and other key technologies. He says they're going to work on curbing the flow of ingredients or actual fentanyl to the United States, which, of course, has been killing so many Americans. And they're going to be buying soybeans from American farmers who've been growing them for years on the expectation that the Chinese would buy them. He says all that, and yet we have yet to see things in writing. There's also word this morning, and we're going to talk about this in a moment, about the TikTok deal. But again, all of it up in the air for now. As the president says, it all went very well. He says it was a 12 out of 10 on a 10 scale. The Chinese generally said it was a positive exchange, but have provided much fewer details than the United States. Remember, the president had spent days, if not weeks, hyping up this meeting as an important one, and one where he wanted to get concessions from President Xi to essentially bend to his will on all those issues I mentioned. And so far, at least, they're claiming it was quite a success, but we'll have to wait and see the details again in the coming days, potentially coming weeks.
All right, let me ask you about something else, Ed. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says that China has approved the transfer agreement for TikTok. This is interesting. What do we know?
Yeah. Well, this was the first signal of we have something, but it's still being worked out. And what the Treasury Secretary said this morning is it could be several more weeks, if not months, until that deal is finalized. Well, it's been more than a year, or almost a year, since Congress passed a law basically requiring this to happen, and it's been strung along by the Trump administration. So if they have essentially an agreement, great, but if it's not in writing and official yet, it's not done. And they haven't, of course, provided those details. But again, saying that, in essence, in recent days, first a series of meetings that went on over last weekend in Malaysia, and then in the conversation the two had earlier today, there is an agreement to essentially establish that U.S.-based entity that would own the app. Question, of course, still about who really runs and owns the algorithm, and to what extent are the Chinese still involved or able to see what's going on, at least when Americans are using it. All of it's still to be determined. But to say all those things and then get on planes and come home means that we have to spend the next few days sorting out the details.
All right, Ed O'Keefe, on top of it all for us from the White House this morning. Ed, thank you very much, my friend. Appreciate you.
Take care.
All right, the potential deal that the president outlined with China could impact multiple corners of the U.S. economy, but as we said, those details remain scarce. So joining me now in Studio 55 is CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady. So Kelly, you have a sense of what these measures could potentially mean in terms of immediate relief for U.S. consumers. Give me a sense of that.
So if that tariff comes down by 10%, that's an obvious one, right? Because right now that's something that consumers, businesses, the supply chain are absorbing. And in theory, that relief might be passed on to the consumer. So that would be one. The other would be businesses that, like the farmers, right? If they are having more of their agricultural products bought, maybe that means that they're able to pass some of that on in some other areas, right? Things just sort of trickle down. I think the bigger thing is not necessarily relief, though, for consumers, but it's not more pain. Because remember, this would be in opposition to a 100% additional tariff. So it's more, okay, a little bit of relief, but what you're actually avoiding is bigger pain in the future.
Yeah. All right. That helps when I'm buying stuff on AliExpress, I guess, just a little bit. Let's turn to the Fed now. We saw a rare double descent yesterday as the board slashed interest rates to the lowest levels we've seen in years. help me understand what this dissent was all about.
So one person of the 12 voting members said we should have a bigger rate cut, and one said we shouldn't have a rate cut at all. And it really speaks to the fact that a lot of the different Fed members don't have a clear idea of what the path forward is. Now, they decided to cut interest rates because they wanted to prioritize the weakness in the labor market, even though we are seeing prices continue to tick up. Remember, inflation just hit 3% last week. That being said, what happens next is a really big question mark. We were all expecting another rate cut in December. I want to play you a clip from what Powell said yesterday when he was getting questions about that.
We have, strong views across the committee. And as I mentioned, there were strongly differing views today. And the takeaway from that is that we haven't made a decision about December.
So the takeaway from that is also that the market tanked right when he said that.
Right?
I was at the New York Stock Exchange, and I said to my producer, I said, watch the Dow. And she goes, oh, my God, it's going down, because investors like rate cuts. Because why? That makes investing in AI cheaper, makes investing in general cheaper. Now, that doesn't mean that we aren't getting a rate cut in December.
Right.
It's just that it's not a certainty.
Wow. I just love the real-time activity that you can see just based on what the Fed chair is saying to investors. Kelly O'Grady, always good to have you here in Studio 55. Thank you very much.